Runner, the first infected type, is the runner. This is the earliest stage of infection, and also the one that still looks the most human. Runners appear throughout The Last of Us, Left Behind, and The Last of Us Part 2, and they represent the very beginning of the host's transformation. At this stage, the body is still mostly intact. The face may show early fungal growth, blood, and signs of physical collapse, but the infected still moves in a way that feels disturbingly human. And that is part of what makes runners so unsettling. They do not look completely gone yet. They feel like people who were only recently overtaken. In combat, runners are fast, aggressive, and relentless. They do not rely on armor or advanced mutations. Their danger comes from speed, panic, and numbers. They charge directly at prey and try to overwhelm their target through raw violence. Even though they are considered the weakest major infected type, they can still be deadly, especially when they attack in groups. A good detail about runners is that they often feel the most chaotic out of all infected. Later stages become more specialized, but runners still carry that unstable energy of a body being consumed in real time. They are the starting point of the infection's evolution, but they are already terrifying enough on their own. Stalker. The next major stage is the Stalker. Stalkers appear in The Last of Us, Left Behind, and The Last of Us Part 2, and they represent a more advanced form of infection than the runner. This is where the infected begins to feel much less like a mindless attacker and much more like a deliberate hunter. Visually, the fungus has spread further across the head and body, but not enough to fully destroy the infected's mobility. And that balance is what makes the Stalker so dangerous. It still has speed, but now it also has patience. Unlike runners, Stalkers do not always rush in immediately. They hide behind walls, move through dark rooms, disappear into corners, and wait for the right moment to strike. That behavior makes them one of the creepiest infected types in the series. A runner is scary because it charges at you. A Stalker is scary because sometimes it does not. It watches first. It tracks first. It turns every dark hallway into a trap. One of the most memorable things about Stalkers is how they change the mood of an encounter. They force the player to slow down, check every corner, and feel constantly watched. That makes them feel less like victims of a disease, and more like predators shaped by the infection itself. Clicker. The third major infected type is the clicker. This is the most iconic infected form in the entire franchise. Clickers appear throughout The Last of Us, Left Behind, and The Last of Us Part 2, and they are often the first infected that people associate with the series. By the time a host reaches this stage, the cordyceps fungus has spread so aggressively that it completely deforms the head and destroys the eyes. The infected becomes blind, but that does not make it weaker. Instead, it adapts. Clickers use echolocation to navigate and locate prey, producing the sharp clicking sounds that gave them their name. That sound is one of the most recognizable parts of The Last of Us. It is not just creepy atmosphere. It means the infected is actively listening, waiting for movement, and ready to attack the second it detects a target. Clickers are much more dangerous than earlier infected because they are stronger, more lethal, and much harder to escape once they close the distance. Visually, they are unforgettable. The fungus bursts through the skull and face, creating a grotesque, crown-like growth that makes them barely recognizable as human. At this point, the infection has not just taken over the body. It has reshaped it into something entirely new. A great curiosity about clickers is that they completely changed how people think about infected in this world. They are not just memorable because of their design. They are memorable because they define the tension of the series. Once clickers are present, stealth becomes more important, sound becomes more dangerous, and every small mistake feels like it could be fatal. Bloater. After the clicker comes the bloater. This is one of the most advanced and brutal forms of infection in the series. Bloaters appear in The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2, and they represent what happens when the cordyceps infection is left to grow for many years. By this stage, the infected body has changed dramatically. The fungal growth has hardened across the skin, forming a thick natural armor that makes the bloater incredibly resistant to damage. It is larger, heavier, and much more durable than the infected that came before it. It may be slower, but it makes up for that with overwhelming strength. A bloater does not need speed when it can crush almost anything that gets too close. Its attacks are built around sheer force, impact, and durability. It feels less like a person infected by a fungus, and more like a living tank made of flesh and cordyceps. What makes the bloater so interesting is that it shows how the infection keeps adapting over time. Earlier infected are faster and more reactive. The bloater is different. It is built to survive, absorb punishment, and dominate through pure power. By this point, almost nothing human is left in the way it looks, moves, or fights. A good curiosity here is that the bloater feels like the infection's answer to brute force. If the clicker is a specialized hunter, the bloater is a walking wall of fungal armor. It is one of the clearest signs that cordyceps does not just kill the host. It rebuilds the host into something else. Shambler, then we have the Shambler. The Shambler appears in The Last of Us Part 2, and it is one of the most distinct advanced infected in the franchise. At first glance, it may seem similar to a bloater, because it is also large, mutated, and dangerous at close range. But the way it fights is completely different. Instead of relying mainly on armor and raw physical domination, the Shambler is built around chemical threat. Its body releases acidic bursts and toxic clouds, making the space around it extremely dangerous. That means the Shambler does not just attack the person in front of it. It attacks the entire area around it. This changes the tension of the fight. A bloater pressures you with force. A Shambler pressures you with contamination. It turns distance, positioning, and movement into a survival problem, because even getting too close can become deadly. Visually, the Shambler looks swollen, unstable, and corrosive, like the infection took a different route and created something designed to rot everything around it. And that is what makes it feel like a separate branch of the infection, rather than just another upgraded bloater. A really interesting detail about the Shambler is that it helps show that cordyceps does not always evolve in one straight line. Depending on time, condition, and environment, the infection can produce different late-stage outcomes. That makes the Shambler one of the best examples of how flexible and horrifying this infection really is. Rat King, the final and most horrifying infected entity, is the Rat King. The Rat King appears in The Last of Us Part 2, and unlike the other infected, it is not a normal stage of progression. It is a unique abomination, a rare and extreme result of the infection being left unchecked for an incredibly long time. The Rat King is made from multiple infected bodies fused together into a single massive superorganism. That alone makes it different from every other infected in the series. This is not just one host reaching an advanced stage. This is several infected merging into one grotesque creature through years of uncontrolled fungal growth. Its size, aggression, and durability make it one of the most dangerous infected ever seen in this world. It feels less like an enemy, and more like the infection itself given physical form. Every part of it looks wrong, not just mutated, but collapsed into something that should not even exist. What makes the Rat King so memorable is that it represents the absolute worst possible outcome of cordyceps infection. It is not simply stronger than a bloater, or more disturbing than a clicker. It is something beyond the normal infected system. A biological disaster that feels like the final stage of total loss, total fusion, and total monstrosity. A great curiosity about the Rat King is that it does not feel like a regular infected encounter at all. It feels like a hidden nightmare that was growing somewhere in the dark for years, waiting to be discovered. And that is why it stands apart from every other infected in the franchise. Which infected, or zombie, should I cover next? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy videos about zombies, infected, and creatures from games, movies, and TV shows, don't forget to like and subscribe.